Hello and welcome, everyone. I am Akiba from CryptoSlate, and I am here to moderate what I am expecting to be a fascinating conversation. I'm hoping I can keep up around account abstraction in the blockchain space. I've got with me Matt, James, and Stefan, who are arguably three experts in the area, I would like to say. Let's see whether they would refer to them as such. Matt, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, Matt Locke here. Been in the Ethereum space since 2017, and I was with Near Protocol from 2020 till 2022, and then I joined Proximity Labs, which helps DeFi teams build on Near. And I have a side project now called Keypom, which takes advantage of Near Protocol's account abstraction, and basically just takes it a step further for everyday users.
Thanks, Matt. Right, thanks very much. James, over to you.
Hey guys, I'm James Bork from California. I've been working in the crypto space officially since 2019, been kind of hanging around since 2017, and very much focused on Web3 infrastructure. So Web3 native encryption, security, privacy, which is how we got to Intu, which is now doing cryptographic infrastructure for distributed ownership. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And last but not least, Stefan.
Yeah, no, I'm Stefan. I co-founded Gnosis, and I started the Gnosis Safe project with the Gnosis, which is the most used smart contract wallet at this point. And it's actually also a foundation for account abstraction. And as we see it, multiple initiatives in parallel, but I think the Safe is de facto today what people can use as account abstraction.
Fantastic. So let's get straight into it. There's been a lot of buzz, a lot of talking around account abstraction. Over Vitalik shared some stuff, I think it was in December, around the matter. Is account abstraction the holy grail? And I think the first point I'd like to talk on, though, because I think it's important that we're on the same page, is what do you think of when you think of account abstraction? I'd like to direct this first to Matt, and then we can see whether the others on the call agree and see whether we're on the same page.
Yeah, that's a great question. I was first kind of thrown back a little bit when I found out when I just joined Near Protocol and I found out that like keys were separated from account IDs and names and stuff. And I was like, okay, what's going on here? This is weird. Um, and it just kind of like blew my mind because everything I had known before that was basically, your account, like your public key derives into like your account ID. And I was like, oh, okay. So it's always going to be like that. And I had done like various tricks, like, like how do you sell an account to somebody and things like that. And I'd sort of dove into these topics before in the Ethereum
Mhm.
space. And then when I saw that on Near, I was just like, okay, this is cool. And then it sort of lay dormant in my mind for a while. And then now that AA is like everywhere, it's really cool to see all the different things that people are coming up with. I really am particularly excited for all the cross-chain developments that are going on right now.
Okay, but so what when you think of account abstraction, what's the first thing that comes to mind? How would you define account abstraction yourself?
I'm gonna butcher it, but basically, I just think it's basically breaking out like an account into various different like properties. So like everyone was talking about breaking out protocols into, execution, storage, and different sort of aspects,
Hmm.
making things modular. So I think account abstraction is basically making accounts more modular.
Hmm. And I think herein lies then the issue, isn't it? In terms of making something more modular doesn't really strike me as a clear standard for what an account abstraction protocol or DApp would be. James, have you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean it's been interesting. So like we've been working on eliminating this single point of failure of a private key, right? Like we're convinced that for most mainstream users that private key is terrifying, right? If I lose this password, right? If it was my mother speaking, if I lose my password, then I lose all my crypto assets, I lose my NFTs, everything that I've done. And then just recently, we started being compared with account abstraction, which I thought was really interesting. I think the end goals of account abstraction are very clear, right? We want to be able to provide mainstream users, and I mean Web3 native people too, like a better experience, right? It's about eliminating part of that risk and increasing the functionality of accounts. And one of the good ways that we can do that, one of the ways that's being explored, right now with all this account abstraction stuff, is how can we make accounts, the way that people identify to the network, more useful for end users. And it's, I mean, interesting for us, like we've been very much focused on what we've been calling infrastructure, right? Like using cryptography to achieve similar results. But the conversation has been largely focused on smart contracts, right? How can we use smart contract account abstraction to kind of achieve account recovery, distributed ownership, things that more clearly or better meet kind of the human expectations of it, right? As an end user, I'm familiar with two-factor authentication. I'm familiar with, hey, I lost my password, send me an email, let me reset it, right? These are the experiences that people want, but that's impossible with a single private key. So I think that the end goals of account abstraction as a whole, it's what we need for the next kind of generation of users.
Do you have any thoughts, and do you agree, Stefan? Obviously, I think with Gnosis and Gnosis Safe now, just Safe, probably the closest, one of the closest projects to what people would consider account abstraction. So there's a two-part question here, in that, do you have anything to add? And then, do you consider Safe to be an account abstraction tool?
Yeah. So first question, like to add to what Matt and James already said, like kind of going back to where, like on Ethereum, this discussion started. So in Ethereum, we have two types of accounts. The externally owned account, which is controlled by a private key. And then you have, on the other side, you have the smart contract account, which consists of code and storage. And it's a first-class citizen, so it has the same rights to interact on Ethereum as a private key controlled account. But it's fundamentally still different. And so as James said, like the issue with private key controlled accounts is that, well, the user has to control this private key and has to make sure that no one else gets access to it, that he's not losing access to it. Right now, most people are storing a seed phrase somewhere in order to preserve access rights. And that's not how it's going to work for mass adoption, obviously. Like if you lose password, what happens to many people, right? Like, and then you will lose access to all your financial savings. That's not great. That's not going to work. There, like account abstraction is now trying to kind of unify those two concepts into one, right? Like that's the high level goal. To instead of having those two different types of accounts, you have only one. And would allow also on Ethereum to implement, for example, different kind of access controls, not only this one specific cryptography that Ethereum is using today to access accounts, but you could implement whatever you want. And so on a protocol level, that's pretty difficult to do. And so eventually it will happen. But right now, the way to go to implement let's say, the benefits of account abstraction is to do kind of intermediary steps where you create smart contract accounts which allow private keys to interact via the smart contract, and kind of expose the private key control account to all the benefits that the smart contract account has, which is programmability. You can program whatever you want into this account. And that's exactly what the Safe does. The Safe is a smart contract account. It's very generic. You can do whatever you want with it. You can extend it as you like. It's fully programmable. And so you can add all the features that account abstraction brings to this account. And that's why we de facto say that's account abstraction, right? Like it has all the benefits that even if you push it to a protocol layer, which in Ethereum might happen in like 5 years, already today. And and there are different initiatives right now on Ethereum. There's an EIP 4337 trying to do that. But ultimately, this EIP is also not real account abstraction. It is bringing the benefits of account abstraction and kind of solving the problem of relaying transactions that can be sent via this account. So all of these are kind of intermediary steps. Other blockchains have been natively implementing account abstraction, like Starknet, for example. And we see that developers on those networks, they really appreciate the benefits of it. And there are many benefits to it. So it's not only about solving the problem of recovery, like how do I get access to my account when I lose like my private key, for example, but it's also about other user experience, like batching transactions, right? Like now, if you operate on Ethereum, a user has to approve a token to a smart contract before they can do something with it. Like, which retail user will ever understand why do I have to do this?
Very
Doesn't make any
confusing.
sense. So, and with account abstraction, or like for example through the safe, we can combine all of those transactions into one. Like one business transaction is one transaction that the user signs. That makes sense. It makes sense from a user experience point of view. And there's many other benefits to it. For example, fee abstraction, right? Like right now, he has to have Ether in his account and then DAI or whatever he wants to use to actually do the transaction, and that doesn't make really much sense for users, and it's just a barrier to access an application. And with account abstraction, we can abstract this away and can let the user pay in only one token. And yeah, so there's plenty of benefits. It breaks down to the fact that you have a programmable account that can define exactly like how you interact with an account.
So just building on that as well, Matt, you were obviously talking about when you were first introduced to Near and having elements of account abstraction built into the protocol. So building on what Stefan's saying there, do you feel that having account abstraction built into the layer one is something that we really need to have, or can layer twos and sidechains solve the problem equally well?
That's a great question. I don't know if you need to have it at the protocol level, but one thing that it does kind of afford is it makes it a lot easier for developers to experiment with it, to play with it, to do many different things, because it's really just right there. It's as simple as, you know, like a dot add key, dot remove key in an SDK for the protocol, right? So it's very useful. It's very handy. I just want to also say, like, building on what Stefan was saying about it's not just about user recovery. Like, one of the first things we did was actually something called link drops on Near. And what we did was we basically passed around Web2 links with a secret key inside them. And then when you landed on the page that the link was taking you to, it would take the secret key. It would basically go to a smart contract that had a deposit for only that key. So this was a smart contract with many keys added to it that were sort of put there by basically various different funding accounts. And the secret key would be consumed by the web app, and it would basically go to the contract. It would claim the deposit, and then it would allow you to create an account. That's an optional step, you know, create a brand new account, and then it would basically transfer the deposit into the new account. If you had an existing account, you can claim it to an existing account. And this is still something that's in production today, like in the Near web wallet and in many different wallets. It's a standard. It's basically the link drop standard on Near. So that's a really fun way to kind of, like, you know, onboard people. I actually like my side project, which is becoming more than a side project, called Keypom. It's all about onboarding. And onboarding, usually people think new users. I actually think it's about existing users as well, because if somebody sends me a link to a Web3 game, I'm not going to like run to a drawer, get out my ledger, plug it in, and like do a bunch of crap just to play some game or like make a profile. So I don't know if it's like essential to have at the protocol layer. One thing I would comment, and I know like I might get some pushback here from the panel, but deploying contracts all the time to get the same effect is like a little bit expensive. So if you do push it to the protocol, at least like having many keys attached to one account, and the keys can be sort of permissioned and limited to certain things, and like given a gas allowance, for example, at the protocol layer, you have just actually abstracted away all of that code that you needed to previously put in a bunch of different contracts. So I think like it's kind of like putting it at the protocol layer is like a refactoring. And it does kind of afford a lot of great developer experience and a lot of cool things to be built on top of it.
James,
Yeah.
do you agree with those statements? And do you have any concerns around whether account abstraction at a protocol level brings additional risks and moving parts to the whole ecosystem?
So I'll agree with Matt that, you know, if you're doing it at the smart contract or the application layer, you are introducing a ton of complexity, right, as well as cost. There's code risk, right? If the smart contract is upgradable, is something broken later, like if it's a dApp, that's okay. If it's your account, that's a much bigger problem. So the goal, the dream would be that there's obviously a ton of diligence around this, but we're moving so fast that a lot of times we just launch stuff and things go sideways. The other issue I have kind of by handling it not at the protocol layer or not as infrastructure is you start getting into compatibility issues, right? Like, am I expecting this kind of response from this smart contract in my dApp? If I'm a developer, what kind of compatibility am I looking for? As we keep getting more and more networks, more and more chains, do I have to interact with different smart contracts on different networks? Can I use the same account on Near as I would on another EVM chain, right? And so I think that the more that we can divorce the functionality that we want from account abstraction, from like the core tenets of the programmability of it, right? Like for us, it's account recovery, it's key rotation, participant rotation, right? Changing the EOAs that are owning this public address that then is used on EVM compatible chains. For us, like, we believe that by plugging that into smart contract account abstraction and giving it as an SDK for developers to build in, that we can empower them to safer build things like, you know, pre-authorized transactions for a game, right, to make that experience better. But if we want to do this mainstream and it's not handled like at the most core layer that we can, it's going to be really hard to make it kind of seamless between all of these different environments that we're expected to kind of play in, right? We've got so many sandboxes and there's more coming out. Like, I don't think that someone that's, you know, used to just having one internet browser and one internet to connect to is going to be comfortable with that idea of switching between networks, switching between accounts, or building for all these different environments. Like, it's a lot of complexity.
What are your thoughts, Stefan?
Yeah, no, I mean, I can second what Matt said. Like, it's definitely about developer experience. I actually had this discussion with Argent. So Argent is building on Starknet. Starknet has account abstraction built in. And I was discussing, arguing, like, okay, why do you actually need this in the core layer versus on the layer on top? And their argument, which I would also partially agree with, at least, is that if it's on the core layer, then it's exposed to all developers, to all dApps. Everyone can build with the assumption that this exists. And that's very important because there are significant changes, right? Like, you have to build a dApp taking this into account. Otherwise, you're wasting time and resources. Like, you cannot build two versions, one assuming a smart contract account and one assuming an UA account. There are ways to tackle this, though. So what we've been building an SDK that allows dApps to easily integrate the SDK, and then you can build your dApp assuming that every user has a smart contract account. So if a user comes with a regular account, like a smart contract account will just be created kind of under the hood for the user. It's true, like, it costs a little bit more gas in setting this up, even though the gas cost has been reduced as much as possible using proxy patterns and such. But in any case, like, I think this is something that is more viable on networks where gas costs are lower than, for example, Ethereum mainnet. And Ethereum mainnet still makes a difference in terms of how much users are spending. If you do this on Polygon or like on Gnosis chain, then it really doesn't make a difference. So, for example, WorldCoin has been creating over, I think, 1 million saves on Polygon and sponsoring all of them. Because they want to have something that's future-proof, and for them the cost of creating these accounts were neglectable.
Do we think that account abstraction, with there being no sort of official standard, is starting to or will become kind of a marketing buzz term. You see it a lot that words are just thrown out when there's a vague sort of relationship to something that's in the zeitgeist. People want to say, "Oh, we have that too." They say when if you look up account abstraction online, you'll find plenty of projects claiming to be account abstraction, and you kind of have to squint to find where exactly that account abstraction is. Matt, do you have any thoughts on that?
All I can say is, cue the chains you've never heard of at East Denver this year, talking about account abstraction and the hacks and just projects that say that they're account abstraction that are really not. It's going to be super fun. Yeah, it's becoming a really hot term. So I don't even know. You guys should probably grill me. I don't even know what I'm doing with this Keypom project is even account abstraction. I mean, all I know is that we're doing interesting things with like, we're just like doing stuff with links, and then you click links and you get to do like, several transactions before you have to like flip into a real account. I think technically it's more for the end user, it's more progressive onboarding. That was a term that kind of like tried to take off and just kind of I think it maybe died at some point. But anyways, I just think it's going to be fun. There's always you made a great point, Liam. There's always a lot of confusion with these terms and unpacking them. I did also just want to mention one thing, and maybe we can just come back to it after you guys give your thoughts on the buzzword. I just going the other way and like going kind of like anti core protocol. I do think with like a lot of advancements in cryptography, especially with threshold signature schemes and stuff like all over the place, and different key types and key derivation methods, that some stuff will actually get pushed out, and then also like contracts will get cheaper and leaner. So I'm kind of torn. Like I like the ease of use of like having it at the core protocol, but I also want to hear your guys' opinion about where you think we're going in terms of, deploying contracts is obviously super cheap on something like Starknet. And like, if we combine that with threshold signatures, like we can do a lot of the stuff that we're talking about. And then I really liked Stefan's comment about, it should just be the same across a lot of different environments, but we can come back to that.
Yeah, James, I'd love your thoughts on that.
I think as a community, we're really good at creating words and inventing stuff and then confusing people. And I think that we need to, it's great for us because it kind of helps us stay on our toes. But if we want to get normal Web 2 developers on board, we have to stop doing it. I think in the past year into like our project, we've been considered everything from, oh, you secure multi-party computation, oh, your threshold signatures, oh, you're like a multi-sig, oh, your account abstraction. It's like, guys, we're trying to build infrastructure. Like, let us finish building it first, and then like drop a name on us, right? Like we'll get there. But account abstraction will be everywhere at Denver this year. It'll be the DAO or the NFT or the DeFi of the past years. And I think it's because for the past 6 or 7 months, all that people have been talking about, especially during the bear market, was how do we get Web 2 on board to Web 3? How do we onboard the next billion users, right? And so account abstraction has become the buzzword for achieving that. And I do agree that in order to get the next billion users, in order to get, like I said, my mom on Web 3, like we have to build the infrastructure to support the experiences that they expect, right? We have to get there. And hopefully we do that in the right way. We have a tendency to say, this is the experience that we want. We can't do this decentralized. We can't do this non-custodial. So instead, we're going to throw in an AWS server and a desktop client, and we're going to do all these other things on the side, and then say it's decentralized and go. And it'll behave the way that they expect, but then something goes wrong, right? When it comes to like threshold signatures and stuff like that, like we love it. Like I agree with you. I think that the more that people start using this without knowing that they're threshold signatures, the better. Right? Intu, like kind of at our core, we're supporting both BLS threshold and ECDSA threshold. ECDSA threshold signatures being incredibly challenging for a lot of reasons, especially in a fully decentralized, non-interactive, asynchronous way. And we're close. And it's just the cryptography has come so far in the past couple of years that's really what Intu's goal is to take this advanced cryptography that previously has been outside of the realm of normal developers and package it in a way that I can build a Web3 enabled game with NFTs and create threshold enabled signature like accounts for my end users. And I think that if we can get to that point where, again, like all the things that you want to happen within your application, the experience that you want to provide are just slightly removed from the core stuff that is how you identify to your account, right? How you prove ownership of that public address. It's going to open up a whole new world of kind of functionality for the smart contracts and for dApps and for Web3 in general.
Thanks very much, James. Stefan, do you think that utility and self-sovereignty are intrinsically linked here, in that can we give up an element of self-sovereignty in order to improve the usability in Web3, or does that just take us back into the world of Web2 again?
Oh, I think I think keeping the nature of having that something like non-custodial is extremely important. But of course, there are different levels of how we can enable this. Mm-hmm. So a project that I found quite interesting is like Web3 Auth, right? Like they do kind of like you can start an account by just using your email and password, and that's obviously fully custodial. But there's a path to upgrade it to something fully non-custodial. And so I think that's probably the way to go, to have something where like it is very easy to onboard users, but there's always a path to become fully owner of your own identity on chain, of everything that's linked to it. And so I think if you really want to onboard the mass market, if you really want to get to 1 billion users, then you certainly have to make some compromises. But again, I think you should always put into the focus that whatever we start with, we can end up in a situation where the user has full control if he wants to.
What about your thoughts on that, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. As I mentioned before, like a lot of what we're working on right now is progressive onboarding. We're like right now, I help DeFi teams build on Near by way of sort of navigating like the the accounts and wallets ecosystem on Near. That's sort of like what I fell into, but my heart really lies in like getting everyday users to just experience crypto as soon as possible and sort of have that aha moment that like these are my assets and nobody can take them away from me, and like have that like cross over to that self-sovereignty. I think it's becoming a more like pressing issue these days for sure, because we've sort of seen a lot of Web2 faltering, which is sort of helping bolster the case for Web3. I totally agree with the fact that progressive onboarding is probably the way to go. Like it's easier for somebody to dip a toe and then basically go a little bit more serious when they sort of have some value there, when they have some conviction. So one of the things that we're actually trying to do, and it's kind of by the way, I look up to like Stefan and Gnosis Safe and stuff in the space, because it's like it is like used everywhere. So it's kind of cool to hear him say, progressive onboarding is a good thing, because we're working on basically what we call like trial accounts. So these are basically like prepaid. It's like prepaid debit cards to use only a particular dApp. So the outcomes, like here you've got 3 people, you've got really just 2 people, like the developer and the users that they want to onboard. And the user can basically take this prepaid account and they can burn up all the whatever the underlying currency is, just playing with the dApp. So they can do stuff in the dApp. They could, maybe it's like an NFT thing. They could like create NFTs and try to put them up on a marketplace and sell them. And once they're sort of like they've actually done some meaningful transaction, once they've actually created some value on chain, let's say they sold one of these NFTs, so their account went like past the amount that they were given, they can actually choose to exit. And basically, like an exit would be taking full control over that account. So now they're free to use all the dApps in the ecosystem. And if we give people accounts, like where we're just sort of pre-funding them with a faucet or something, I mean, everybody knows that you'll just get Sybil attacked, and you'll just get drained. And if I give you cash and I tell you to go shop at a store, you're just going to walk up to the entrance, turn around, and then go to the store that you want to shop at, right? You're not actually going to go in. But if I give you a prepaid debit card and I say or a prepaid card to the store, like a gift card, you have to shop at that store, right? I mean, you could sell the gift card on like a black market or something, but this is the experience that we're trying to build right now. I personally haven't seen anything like it, and we're trying to offer this to devs on a silver platter, and basically just say, hey, go ahead and rip a bunch of these accounts out. The other thing that we're building in, which is sort of, this is between the developer and the user. They have to disclose stuff like this, and they have to be very clear about it. Is the developer can optionally have a key to basically rip this account away from the user and basically say, okay, I gave you the account. You didn't do anything with my game. You didn't create a user profile. So these accounts were just sitting there, and they've got some denomination in them. And the developer can just say, okay, it's been 7 days, it's been a week, I'm going to take it away. This is all optional, all configurable, but this is sort of the world that we're trying to build. We're trying to build like a very seamless, progressive onboarding experience. And the experience for the user for these prepaid accounts is essentially like that link drop experience I mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. Click the link, land in the app, and you're already connected. So basically, there's no connect wallet step. There's nothing. You're just there, and that's what we're kind of striving towards. And I'm pretty excited about it, because I would love nothing more than to just click these links and just mm-hmm. be kind of like plopped into like a Web3 game and like make a profile and just do what I would normally do on any Web2 app. Mm-hmm. Go to a Web2 app, and you just start making stuff. And then there's always a step after you've created something that's like, oh, have you been having fun? Would you like to save your work? Okay, cool. Like, now give us your email and all of your data, right? But instead, this is sort of like, hey, have you been having fun? Okay, cool. Now have fun completely like in a self-sovereign way. So, we're very much in that camp.
James, how are you at Intu thinking about the onboarding process? Obviously, you are building a native sort of example dApp, but the core of what you're building is a protocol.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, my speaker just started talking for absolutely no reason. Sorry. When it comes to onboarding, I mean, we've really been focused for the past year on building the infrastructure. And right, like our goal was empower developers to then empower users and kind of encourage their creativity and their understanding of who their users are, who their customers are, to better tailor that experience. The fact of the matter is that what we're trying to do is complex enough that the average game developer or NFT creator doesn't want to understand advanced cryptography, right? They don't want to read white papers and have to know how to securely use threshold signatures, right? So like our first onboarding experience is really onboarding developers and saying, this is what you can do. Don't worry about this. This is kind of how it works in the background, enough so you can understand it and have some confidence on it. But then on the flip side, for your end user, it's, hey, you can back yourself up, right? You can create recovery options and distribute the risk of owning this public address between your cell phone, your desktop, your hardware wallet, a paper wallet you keep with the safe, and something that you give to someone you trust, right? And just providing the flexibility. I think, kind of back to the previous question, for us, it's self-sovereignty, utility. I think the reality is that it comes back down to choice. Like, I agree with what you guys were saying, and empowering first the developers to have that choice, and then provide that choice to their end users if it's appropriate. But then also, if that choice goes away, it's non-custodial, it's self-sovereign, they can always go back and use another application, right? So our DApp is trying to be the best example of that. But like for ETH Denver, for example, with the hackathon, we're really trying to encourage people to take this new infrastructure and imagine what their end users will want to use it for.
Fantastic. So just to finish off, Stefan, having obviously built Safe, one of the sort of the biggest multi-sig solutions in the space, how do you feel about the development of the other protocols and other things in the space that can improve Web3 accounts? Do you see it as competition, or do you see it as something that will help the space and is something you're looking to collaborate with projects on?
Oh yeah, no, we're definitely interested in collaboration. So it's not like there's only one solution. So for example, right now on Ethereum we have like two different, like a few developments all trying to do the same. Like the standard, which is now kind of pushed the most, is 4337. This approach is again not the whole solution for account abstraction, but it solves the relaying problem and builds it right into the core layer. And our solution right now is actually not compatible with it one-to-one, but we are changing the Safe to make it forward compatible in the future. So ultimately, I think we're all trying to solve the same thing, like getting more users into our space. And there's a lot of moving parts right now. I think ultimately it's just important that we agree on some certain standards so we can really build a great ecosystem around this in terms of account recovery, in terms of just making the overall user experience better. So I think standards are very important, and this will take time until they evolve. So for example, right now it's also not clear how multi-chain works in this scenario, right? Like everyone does their own thing right now. Of course, if you really want to have, let's say, global standards, and also blockchains will have to talk more to each other, ideally not even only EVM compatible chains, but even near Ethereum. Like how do we solve this? It's like still like massive effort in solving those parts. But ultimately we have all the same goals. So we have to collaborate. There's no other way. And it's definitely also our approach. Like we talk to everyone and we want to make sure that everything's compatible. Our basic philosophy is that the user has a portable account. They should be able to go anywhere they want. And we don't want to limit the user in any way and have any lock-ins. So we are very open to collaboration.
Fantastic. Well, I look forward to the developments and seeing the plethora of account abstraction projects at ETH Denver this year, where I will be at. And I know, obviously, Intu is going to be launching there. So I just want to say thank you, Matt, James, Stefan, for joining this talk today. Obviously, we're being hosted by Intu. So with that, I think I'll hand over to James to let people know where they can find out more about Intu, maybe shout out some of the social media channels before we close this one off.
Absolutely. Well, just like to echo that sentiment. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Stefan. Thank you, Liam, for joining us this morning. We're the new guys on the scene. We're super excited about what we've built, and we're super excited to hopefully collaborate with you guys and support the ecosystem in general. You can find out more about Intu at intu.xyz, intu.xyz, and on Twitter at IntuOfficial. So pretty straightforward, 7 letters, intu.xyz, nice and easy. And please be in touch. I know that it's kind of a new thing and there's going to be a lot of questions. If anyone watching this wants to learn more, we'd love to have those conversations.
Fantastic.
So thank you.
Thanks everyone for joining. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.